Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hey there, it's Big Dave here in the Mad Rock Studios here in Sherman. We've got Zac Grantham from Katy Country, which is right across the hall from me, and also Alan Fremont all the way down in McKinney at KLAK Studios down there. He's going to be doing his show here in a couple hours. But before we get to all of that, we have a very special guest. Got on the phone yesterday with Jay Lindley, the voice of the Bearcats. Of course, you know, as Mad Rock being the official radio home of Sherman Bearcat football. And he said, hey, you know, they've got this guy coming in, got one heck of a story. This just happens to be Sherman's bye week, so we don't have a game. So Jay wasn't able to do an interview with him. So I was like, well, why don't we just hop on to StreamYard here and do something with him and talk about some of the presentations he's doing. And I'm telling you, quite an interesting story. I'll let him get into that, but I was sharing it with Zac earlier and with Alan, but we're going to bring him up on screen here in just a second. Damon West is the author here of The Change Agent. That was his first book there, how a former college quarterback sentenced to life in prison transformed his world. And then most recent book, he has The Coffee Bean, which he co-authored with John Gordon. So everybody, please help me in welcoming Damon West to our StreamYard here. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Hey guys, thanks a lot for having me on. I just noticed the background of Zac and Big Dave over there, man. Y'all are in the same building. Alan over there, you got a little different wallpaper back there, man. But yeah, it's cool. Guys, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for spending your afternoon with me today.
Yeah, so dude, your story is unbelievable. I mean, you have ties here to North Texas. You used to be a quarterback for University of North Texas, but I'll let you tell that. You tell it much. I watched your videos earlier, so you tell the story way better than I do. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, I came from I had every opportunity and advantage in life, guys. I came from a great family growing up in Port Arthur, Texas. My dad was a sports writer for 50 years. I was a 3-year starting quarterback for my 5A school. Got a scholarship to play ball at the University of North Texas. But unfortunately, I got into substance abuse at a young age in life. And the worst part about this is I have a bad belief system growing up. And my bad belief system, a bad belief system tells you how to do something the wrong way over and over again. And a belief system is really hard to change. And, I got hurt at North Texas in 1996 against Texas A&M, never played college football again. And I got further and further into drug abuse. And, I went on living a normal life, y'all. I mean, I worked in Congress, worked for a guy running for president of the United States, worked on Wall Street. I moved back to Dallas in 2004 to train to be a stockbroker at UBS right there in Park Cities and University Park area. And it was at that job as a broker that I was introduced to meth for the first time. And y'all, meth was a game changer. I mean, it was, I tell people all the time, it's the most evil, most destructive drug ever created by man. And once I became an addict to meth, once I became a slave to that drug, I lost everything. I mean, my job, my home, my car, my savings account, my family, my tethering to God. And I went from working on Wall Street to living on the streets of Dallas. And so I'm homeless. I'm sleeping in abandoned buildings. I'm sleeping in people's cars. I'm sleeping in dope houses. And I started committing property crimes to fund my addiction, breaking into cars, breaking into storage units. And eventually it escalated to home burglary. And guys, listen, these home burglaries, my victims, let me tell you what my victims had to sacrifice for me to have this story today. I didn't just steal these people's property. I stole these people's sense of security. And I don't know if they ever get that back. And that's a big deal. When I got in front of a jury finally, after Dallas SWAT team took me down in 2008 for committing property crimes against people in Dallas for over 3 years, this Dallas jury on May 18th, 2009, listened to all this overwhelming evidence of my guilt, and they went to deliberate on my sentence for 10 minutes, y'all. 10 minutes. I don't know how much Law and Order you watch, but if a jury's gone for 10 minutes, they smoked you. When I came back to that courtroom, that jury had sentenced me to 65 years in prison. 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, y'all. It was a life sentence. And that was my rock bottom moment. That's when I knew that something had to change and that something was me. But I got a little direction from my mother right after the trial. And she told me, she said, do not come back as someone we don't recognize. Do not get in one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. And she said, do you understand this debt you're going to pay to your father and I? And I told him I did. But guys, I didn't really know anything about prison. I didn't have any clue how I was going to do that. And in Dallas County Jail is where I met the guy that told me about the coffee bean. Y'all have heard the coffee bean story, right?
Yeah. Mr. Jackson, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, Mr. Jackson. That's it. Yeah. And so Mr. Jackson, he's the only inmate in a pod of 64 inmates that's telling me something antithetical to the common message, which is like, hey, just get into a gang and the gang will take care of you. The gang is your family. That's what everybody in jail is saying. But Mr. Jackson told me, he said, imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And he said, anything we put in that pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. And he said, I want to put 3 things in that pot of boiling water and watch how they change: a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. And so he walks me through it. He tells me if I put a carrot in that pot of boiling water we call prison, he said the carrot turns soft, gets beat. He gets beat, he gets robbed, he gets raped, he may get killed. He said you don't want to be the carrot. He said the egg in a pot of boiling water turns hard. He said the egg is a shell that protects it physically, but inside that shell, that soft liquid core, his heart becomes hardened. And he said, now, if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, you have become institutionalized, and you do not come back as someone your parents recognize, because your eggshell will have swastikas tattooed all over it. And that's when he asked me. He said, what about the coffee bean, West? And I had no clue, guys. I didn't know about a coffee bean until Mr. Jackson told me. He said, if I put a coffee bean into that same pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you have to change the name of the water to coffee. Because he said the coffee bean, the smallest of these 3 things, he said small like you, West, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot. And he said every one of us in life puts out energy, negative or positive. Whatever kind of energy we put out, we attract back. It's called the law of attraction. And so he said the power was inside the coffee bean the whole time, just like the power is inside of you. And the last thing Mr. Jackson told me before I got shipped off to prison in 2009, he said, West, go out there and go be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean, guys. And I mean, that was the message he sent me with, but it didn't come with a set of instructions, so I had to figure it out in prison, but I did. I finally figured out how to become that coffee bean.
So have you talked to Mr. Jackson since then?
Great question, Zach. Probably the most common question I get, most frequent question I get. Speaking, I don't know Mr. Jackson's real name, and I give him the name. I've given the name Mr. Jackson because he went by the name Muhammad. He was a guy that had changed. These guys, when they convert to Islam in prison, they give up what's called their government name. My government name is Damon West. Yours is Zac Grantham. Think about Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay goes to prison, becomes Muhammad Ali. This guy went by the name Muhammad as well. I don't have Muhammad's real name or his birthday. And I've called Dallas County Jail asking before, but they're like, without some kind of, identifying information, I can't help you. So I've got to hope. And one of the reasons why I do media when I come around Dallas now is I got to hope that maybe he's going to tune into something and find me. I've got a hell of a story for this guy, I got to tell this guy, because think about it, Zach. This guy is talking to a guy in Dallas County Jail that he probably doesn't think that there's any chance I'm going to survive this machine with teeth I'm about to be chunked into. Mm-hmm. I asked Mr. Jackson one day in Dallas County Jail, I said, Mr. Jackson, what do you find more of in prison? And without hesitation, he fired back and he said, eggs. He said, the egg is a natural evolution of a human being inside the environment you're about to go into, and you will probably become an egg too. And I would love to find the guy and tell him, man, I became that coffee bean,
So maybe watching right now. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and I saw
right now, Mr. Jackson.
I saw in one of your videos, Damon, that you were talking about servant leadership. How has that kind of turned your life around?
Great question, Zach. So servant leadership, I define it as, helping other people achieve their goals in life, helping to raise other people up to a different station of life. Because really, Zach, when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best, because that's what we're supposed to be doing in life. Somebody helped us get where we are on the way. And our job is to help other people out. The most fundamental necessity I found to being a servant leader is humility. And humility, I define that as being right sized. When we're right sized, then we can become useful. But I'll tell you a little story. You got about 2 minutes for a story about servant leadership. There's a guy that used to be in the Stiles Chapel prison. Stiles unit was the maximum security prison I was in Beaumont, Texas, the Mark Stiles unit. And there was a guy that you could find inside that chapel every Monday night, a guy named Joe Tatoris. Joe Tatoris loved being around the most marginalized in society, people that could do nothing for him. We're the cursed, the wicked, the sinners. And he loved being around people. And he's really deep into his faith, that gospel. That Matthew 25:36, when I was in prison, you visited me. Joe lived that, man. But let me tell you about Joe. Joe graduated Texas A&M in 1970. He's from Beaumont. Graduates A&M in 70, moves back to Beaumont, starts his family out, marries his high school sweetheart, then opens up his first little sandwich shop in 1976. His little sandwich shop had 4 employees and 1 store. But today, Jason's Deli is everywhere. I mean, he's got 12,000 employees now of 300 stores, and they're in over 30 states. And so Joe, the founder of Jason's Deli, spend as much time as he could inside of a maximum security prison. So when I got out of prison, Joe began mentoring me. And I asked Joe one day, I said, Joe, you talk about servant leadership all the time. Where did you first learn about servant leadership? And he told me the story. He said it was the early 90s. He said Jason's Deli was expanding. We were franchising out in other states, and we're expanding all over Texas. He said the business was growing, but he wasn't happy, and his employees, more importantly, were not happy. So he went to this business lecture in Texas A&M in 1995, I think is the year he said. And the speaker that day was a guy named David Glass. Now, David Glass may sound familiar to y'all because David Glass was the first CEO of Walmart. He was the guy that Sam Walton handpicked to step in when Walton retired in the late 80s. So David Glass gave a presentation that day called Servant Leadership, and it blew Joe away because Joe, up until that time, thought a servant was someone that did the menial tasks. They swept the floors. They carried the towel. They did stuff that the leader doesn't want to do because the leader sits back and watches his servants work. Well, according to David Glass, a servant leader is someone that helps his people achieve their goals in life, helps raise them up to a different stage of life, helps them achieve and reach their goals in life, because that's what we're called to do. So Joe realized he had it all wrong. So he went back to Beaumont after that lecture, and he said he changed the way Jason's Deli did business. He gave better wages. He gave better benefits. He said it cost him a fortune on the front end, but then something happened at Jason's Deli that business is studied now. People went to work for Jason's Deli, and they didn't just go work there for a job. They went to work there for a career. When I go to Jason's Delis all over the country, y'all, because first of all, I love the food. And second of all, I patronize my buddy Joe, who passed away about 15 months ago. But I always like to find the general manager on duty in a Jason's Deli anywhere in the country and say, hey, how long has your longest employee been here? And the answer is astonishing. It's 15 years, 18 years, 25 years. 30 years. I talked to a guy that's been working at Jason's Deli for 40 years.
Wow.
40 years at a fast food place, man.
Yep.
Doesn't happen anywhere else. And Joe told me, he said, man, my business buddies would ask me all the time, Joe, where do you find your people? What's your secret? Where do you find your people from? And Joe said the same place you find your people from, but it's what happens when they get on the inside of my organization. That's the difference. And that is called servant leadership. So it's just a real fascinating guy that gave me this wonderful life lesson about servant leadership because of the life he led. Man, he was a servant leader.
Now, the reason why you're actually in town, and you got to show off your shirt here in a second, because you're actually there at Sherman ISD right now, and they made you a special shirt there. It says the coffee bean on there with the Bearcat paw on there. That's fantastic.
I love it.
You're here to actually do some presentations, and I'm going to bring something up on screen here. But our friends there at the Sherman Bearcat Athletics Department bringing you into town to talk to student athletes, to talk to faculty and staff, and to talk to the parents and the community. So the student athletes, have you already had a chance to talk to them, or are you doing that this afternoon?
No, we're going to do that this afternoon. That's going to be the first one. We're going to kick off this 3-event tour of Sherman, Texas. Bob, what time we're doing this? 3 o'clock? 2:50. Right here in the gym.
Gotcha. And then tonight is an actual presentation that's open to the community, to anybody who wants to come and be a part of that. But for parents and community there at the Sherman High School Auditorium starting at 6:30. Of course, I recommend you go there a little bit earlier. And then, again, if you can't make it to the live event, or maybe you don't want to be in the auditorium with a bunch of people, we understand people want to do social distancing. So if you can't make it to your live presentation, then you actually will be on part of a live stream tomorrow morning starting around 7 o'clock as you do another presentation for the Sherman High School faculty and staff. So people have plenty of opportunities to either see you live or see you at some point, and I'll take that banner off the bottom there just so you can see it. So by the way, that URL there, it should be shsbearcats.net instead of .com on there /broadcast. But we put that link up on our website page if you want to check that out at madrock1025.com. So yeah, you've got 3 different presentations, and you've given us a pretty good glimpse of what you're going to be talking about in those 3. Do you do the same one for everybody, or is it a little bit different for each group?
No, Big Dave, that's a good question, man. You want to tailor it to the audience you're in front of. So, I mean, with the students today, they're going to get a little different message than the parents are going to get. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's the same. I'm going to talk about the coffee bean is the centerpiece of all this, because I think the coffee bean, like I said at the beginning, is a message that the whole world, every group or team or organization can use this coffee bean message. Because look, the world's in a pot of boiling water right now. The country is in a pot of boiling water, but you got 3 choices of how you're going to respond to this. And there are your choices. You can let what's going on right now around you make you soft and sad and weak like the carrot, or hard and mad and mean like the egg. Or you can choose to jump in that pot of boiling water called life and tell life, turn it up. I got this. Because the longer the coffee bean sits in the pot of boiling water, the stronger the pot of coffee is going to be, Dave.
And of
Great
course,
story, Damon. Gosh, great story.
I know, right? I mean, it's intense. You're an intense guy, dude, and I totally get it. Because I think on one of your videos, you're like, I mean, you've been out of prison, what, like 3.5 years, something like that now?
It'll be 5 years next week. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, you have everything, and your video on your website, and I highly recommend everybody goes, if you're going to go to the presentation tonight, you want to get a glimpse of it, go to damonwest.org and watch that video. It's about 13 minutes long, I think, or whatever. But, I mean, it's going to blow your mind. I mean, the way you put it, you're on parole for a very long time, but you're not letting that stop your life. You're living your life, and you're telling your story as much as you can.
Yeah, Big Dave, I tell people all the time, look, I'm on parole until 2073. I mean, I can't even vote until 2075. You got to be 2 years past your sentence to vote. Not even a presidential year. But I don't even worry about that, y'all, because I'm not worried about parole. What am I going to do? What parole children do? Absolutely, I'm going to do. I follow rules and laws to this day. But my thing is this: I'm a coffee bean, and a coffee bean doesn't worry about someone saying, "Hey, you're on parole." That parole is just, that's something ancillary. It's in the peripheral of what's going on in my life. I'm on a mission to go out and try to change the world one little pot of coffee at a time, one little town at a time. And being on parole is not going to stop that. And parole, actually, what's interesting is they see me as a partner in what I'm trying to do to help change society. To the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, we work together on a lot of stuff now, and they're a very good partner to have.
Well, I'm very glad that there are people like you out there to tell these stories to, especially to communities, to organizations, to students, to kids. I mean, it's just an amazing story, and appreciate you taking the time before you have to do a presentation this afternoon to talk to us here.
Hey, man, you gave me your time. That's the best. The three of y'all shared your time with me. Most valuable commodity you have. So thank you.
Right. And so, again, if you want to go see the live presentation, that's tonight, 6:30 p.m. In the Sherman High School auditorium. And then tomorrow, And if you want
to, baby, man, to be a coffee bean shirt, man, this is great.
If you want to watch that live stream, that'll be there on the shsbearcats.net/broadcasts.
Hey, I got to tell y'all something real quick. Bob Jones, the athletic director out here, took me and showed me the complex that they're building on here. Have y'all been out there to see this place?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. Look, this rivals anything and I go to schools, college and high school all over the country. It rivals anything I've seen out there. I mean, I'm talking about colleges too. I mean, the University of Texas would love to have this. University of Texas is landlocked. They're not going to have, on some levels, this is nicer than some colleges they're building out there. I didn't know Sherman had this in Grayson County. I didn't know it existed, but it's really cool to see.
Yeah, well, hopefully people will come and watch your presentation tonight or watch that stream. And if they hear your message, want to buy your book, they just go to your website, right? DamonWest.org.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold.
Cool.
Awesome, man. We'll appreciate your time again and have fun presenting tonight, okay?
Guys, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Damon.
All right. So there you go. Check out the website when you get a chance there, DamonWest.org. He's going to be doing his thing. That'll be very cool. Like I said, this guy had one heck of a story. I mean, who else do you know with any kind of story like that?
By the way, I probably could have talked to him for about 2 hours.
Yeah, I had to limit you.
And I was like, okay, I just had one question and then let everybody else talk because I have about 14 million things.
Yeah, me too. Because the whole time he was telling that story, Zach, I just couldn't help but start thinking about Joseph in the Bible because this guy had it bad too, and he made it. And, of course, it was a different life story and everything, but how it all turned out. Now, this guy. Plus, I was watching his highlights of his quarterback, and this guy was incredible.
Yeah, and I'm a full believer that God allows certain things to happen in our lives so that way he can use it for his purpose later on in life. And I think for Damon, it was one of those things he had to go through that so that way he can get to this point today. He can tell people about his story and help turn other folks around. And it's just remarkable. And honestly, I probably should have asked him if he had an instance like that. But you know what? Maybe I can go out to the thing tonight or watch it tomorrow morning.
Coffee bean, what a concept, huh?
I love coffee, Alan. You know
me too. I lost my coffee cup. It's around here somewhere.
Awesome. Well, everybody out there, appreciate you watching this, and hopefully you got something out of his message. Go to his website, damonwest.org. Go see the live thing tonight or watch the live stream tomorrow. I mean, it's a really cool opportunity for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So there's the information again. Check it out when you get a chance. We've also posted that up on our website there at madrock1025.com. See you guys later.
See ya.